Hey there kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I watched Anthony's video yesterday, I believe it was, and about the heroes. And I went and got a chance to watch Ron Edwards' video that he made for two backers, which Anthony kind of linked, so I got a chance to watch that maybe before we're supposed to watch it, which is cool. I did not back Champions Now. I think I kind of vacillated. I wasn't sure if I had the money at the time and everything, and I wish I did, but I'll get it at some point. Anyhow. So, sorry, man. I did the best I could, but I was kind of interested in the project. Supers is something that I never actually played. Back in the day, I was a big comic book fan. I'm certainly not the comic book aficionado that Ron is, because Ron can definitely talk at length about various subjects when it comes to science fiction, authors and writing and comic books and all other kinds of geek media, which is really cool stuff. It's stuff that still, despite my advanced age, if I have some time left over, I'd like to go back and really explore some more of that stuff. I was a Marvel guy. Was never really a big DC guy. Not that this really matters. This video is not about that. But I just, I dug. Well, I did like Commandy, Last Boy on Earth. I just, the Jack Kirby stuff. I think that was part of Kirby. I always thought was great. And I remember my dad getting me stuff like that. And I never really got a chance to read too much of the stuff. Like, I can't remember a lot of the stuff that happened. I remember there was a period of time when my brother was buying a ton of Marvel stuff, and he was my younger brother, but then I would read it. So I didn't have to pay any money to go do it. But one of the things I would love to do is go. I know you can buy some. It's not PDF, but whatever it is, you can just have it all on the computer and just read it. And I think if I got the Marvel catalog, I would probably just lose a bunch of time reading all that sort of stuff. So anyhow, let's actually answer the question. The question posed by Ron that Anthony kind of repeated was the idea: can you think of, give an example of something that happened in game that really actually happened, not you thinking about it, but really actually happened in game, where you said, yeah, that was really heroic, what that character did, whether it was your character, somebody else's character, they tell you what's going on, whatever it happens to be. Or can you, and Ron said the other thing was pick it from, like an example from a comic book, not from a movie, not from any other, comic book inspired sort of thing, but just from there. And so I started thinking about this, and it started to get more and more difficult. I'm trying to figure it out. First, I will say, I'll take care of the easy part first. It's been so long since I've read any comic books, that I really have to go back and think about it. I know there were some very sacrificial things that I recall Wolverine doing at one point, even to the point where I forget who the heck he was trying to go, one of the other members of the X-Men he was trying to go save, who was kind of going down this weird path, and he ended up getting almost killed and blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of heroic. But I'll have to think about something that really struck me as incredibly heroic that happened in a comic book. But I wanted to focus more on in-game. I started to think about all the experiences I've had playing role-playing games, and I started to get a little bit sad because I realized I really couldn't think of examples. Hey, Anthony, I couldn't think of examples where I found a character had been particularly heroic. And all of the examples that started to come to me, at first glance, think of, yeah, that was really heroic what they did, but no, it really wasn't. And a lot of the actions that the characters took, whether it was my character, somebody else's character, tend to be more based upon a careful calculation of risk versus reward. What will I get out of this? And we certainly have those moments where, we're supposed to be heroes, we're supposed to be heroic, we're supposed to be the good guys, the protagonists, that sort of thing. And we go around doing mighty heroic deeds, and we're big damn heroes, But is it really heroic? Or is it just something that, we've set out to do? We have goals, we have agendas. And I started to realize, at least for me, part of what defines heroism, and this may be different for you, your mileage may vary, is a personal cost. Let's see if I can actually let Anthony in my video. Can I approve of him being in the video? Never on this particular iPad happens, and it may hiccup or what have you. Hey Ron, what's going on? It says it's adding Anthony. I know we had some problems with this in the past, So we'll see if it really happens or not. We had a whole bunch of hiccups, but I couldn't find anything that really was particularly heroic. Because it always seemed like there was, it's what that sometimes it was simply just within the capacity. Hey, what's going on?
Nothing. I'm just
Nothing.
fascinated by your revelation that it was difficult to think of
Any
examples of being heroic.
any examples of being heroic. Sometimes it was simply that I realized that we somebody might have done something that seemed to be kind of heroic. They saved the village. They did this. They did the thing.
They did
But
the thing.
they did the thing. But then I realized within the abilities of this particular individual it wasn't that hard.
So it
Maybe
wasn't enough of a challenge to be heroic.
it wasn't a challenge. It didn't. It wasn't something where they were really putting themselves at risk. There wasn't a real personal cost for the character or a real hazard of incredible personal cost. And I'm not minimizing the fact that sometimes you can die in these games, but it didn't seem it always seemed more contrived. And I even thought about, like, in our All for One campaign, there are moments where you could say this is kind of heroic, but that's sort of also the camaraderie. These characters have saved each other, but they are brothers in arms. It is not this real heroic thing that's going on. We've frozen, but I'm not sure if we're really frozen. I'm back.
I still hear you. And look, and you're
Back.
you're in motion now. So that's
Okay,
nice.
I'm in motion. Could you hear me when I was talking?
Totally heard you the whole time through.
Okay, you heard me,
Um,
but go ahead.
to to keep focused on supers,
Right,
I mean, player playing character doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, comic book superhero, although it makes it more relevant to champions now. But
right,
um, uh, when we think about comic books and the stories that people are still talking about, I think this point about some sort of personal cost, some kind of sacrifice, some measure of will I even be able to do that? That challenge, either on the heroic side or on the villainous side, I think is important. Like if a Doctor Doom shows up and kind of half-assedly drops a doomsday weapon on some city, he's not really invested that much in
right.
in the outcome, right? Is that even in the character of Doctor Doom to not, go all out for changing the world in some way in which he thinks it should be changed?
Right. No, that makes
Your
sense.
your point about Wolverine when I joined your video, he wanted to do something, and why does he do anything? Right? Is he a character that goes out just for fun?
No, yeah, I mean it depends. I mean, it's like I said, it's been a while, but it was kind of a sense of it wasn't even duty. He just decided this is what he wanted to do. He really cared about that particular person. He went after them, even though it was at some real cost. And I recall there was something where he got stabbed by a katana or something. It was a big deal. He almost died, and there was a whole whatever it happened to be. It struck me at the time as being somewhat heroic.
Right.
Uh, and it was more heroic in a lot of ways than battling some Modoc or whatever the villain of the week happened to be, or
The
the
odd
set.
looking villain of the week.
You know, you're frozen with this great smirk on your face on my screen. I'm not sure if that's what everybody else sees, but I find it incredibly entertaining. So
I'm not frozen on my screen, so that's kind of cool.
awesome, awesome. So
Um,
maybe who knows what this thing will finally look like. But yeah, I get the thought as I was thinking about this all day long. Part of where my mind went was, well, gosh, in a lot of the games that I grew up playing, or that type of game, um, very often it was thinking about the cost to risk sort of thing. Like my characters have done things that were very sacrificial at times, but it wasn't necessary. I can't look back and say when my character ran in for one round and ended up getting killed, but he was the only other person that could do something at that moment, and he put himself in harm's way. It wasn't it wasn't heroic. It wasn't to save everybody else. It was simply because, he had two choices: run away and probably get killed by the thing in the next room, or like make sure the entire group survived. So he had a chance.
Right.
There was nothing heroic about that. It was cost benefit analysis. It was a math problem, if you will. And I started thinking about other games which are structured in such a way, where you're going to have a theme, and maybe we're going to maybe one of these characters is destined to die, and all these things, or they're going to be. So, but you can play a game where you orchestrate a heroic event, and that's great. And I'm not saying that's taking anything away from that, but at the same point, that doesn't strike me on a real like gut level. Was that really heroic, or did we just create a story about a hero? If that makes any sense.
Right, which
Um,
makes on the player side makes it feel less heroic.
right. It's almost to me, as I was thinking more about that and more about the idea of this cost. At least what comes up as the definition for me, or where like the light goes off, because I think that's part of what Ron said near the end of his video was, give me an example where you went, aha, that's my hero. You know,
Right, because it's
it,
about the examples, right? The the
right.
uh, the question isn't. I mean, the question isn't out there to discuss what is heroism or what is
Right.
heroism to you. Is what is an example where you identified it.
Right, exactly. And I'm like going through all my game history, and I'm thinking, man, I'm not finding it. And and I don't know if
Well,
that's just because
let's talk about that for a second. Your game history, right?
right.
Did any of it uh, focus on actually playing superheroes?
That it did not.
All right. So just from that point of view, in context, um,
A little bit, but not yeah. But for the most part, no. Yeah.
I didn't focus on it. So most of the characters that you have in your memory are um, underground removal specialists.
Some of them, but very often we weren't underground. Very often, like we played people that would not qualify as superheroes. But I certainly played my fair share of games where we were kind of crusaders, for lack of a better word. Like we were
Okay.
supposed to be the good guys, where we were, or at least that's what we set
There,
ourselves up to be.
there was something wrong in the world, and you felt that these characters were placed to
Right.
adjust, but yet
We're
they don't come to
different
mind.
from God.
They don't come to your mind instantly as examples of heroes.
Not necessarily, but because I'm thinking of those moments, because that's what kept sticking in my head was that moment of like, man, that was incredibly heroic right there, and it always fell short because it was almost to me, and I understand the question is not about to define what his heroism, but the idea that it came at a cost to the character and maybe to the player. And I started to think of just like how protective or invested we get in our characters. You know,
Yeah, that's an important element of it for me. And like I'm coming from a lot of Call of Cthulhu play, not as much superhero play, but we did have our period. We had our period where we tried out champions. We had our period where we played Marvel superheroes, and the ones that I've played the most were White Wolf's Aberrant and Palladium's Heroes Unlimited, and we used them very, very differently. I mean, because you could get quite cosmic in Aberrant if you chose to, or you could be very grounded in not superhero behavior. You could get grounded in um, famous person behavior.
hmm.
The way that the game was set up is, now gods walk among us,
Right, right.
but it was 2009 or whatever it was the setting point. So the internet is there. Uh, what would it actually be like if someone could fly,
Right.
and not taking it into the late 80s, early 90s paranoia of you're going to be taken to a lab. That part was over. They'd already been taken to labs. People recognized that people with superpowers existed. There's an organization that's trying to harness the powers of these super beings to create a better world. And
Oh,
there are,
that's all from
you know,
Aberrant, right?
yeah, there's
Yeah, I got that on my shelf. I
religions.
bought it for $10 down the street, but yeah, I've read it. I haven't played it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So in this context of you don't have to be a hero,
Right.
right? You could simply get a job. You could wrestle on TV. You could, um, participate in fighting competitions and whatnot. There's lots and lots and lots of ways for you to survive in this world with all of your superpowers. You don't have to be a hero. That was an interesting situation that explored, like for us, why is it that when I've got this character, why is it that I personally feel compelled to do heroic things with them?
Right. No,
Or
that is
you're sitting
interesting.
at the table and the guy who is not compelled, right? The guy who wants to just line up another interview and so on and so forth, do something to generate resources for the character. Like, this is really interesting, right? This dynamic. But in terms of example, we got put in a situation where I had built a very street level character. I just for my own amusement, I tried to put together a character with as many, uh, let's say, low level powers as I could and make them coherent.
Yeah, I recall you
Uh,
talking about that. Yeah.
right. So then I was very quickly outclassed in terms of power by a
Right.
lot of the other characters that we met, PCs or NPCs alike. And when it finally came to dealing with the big threat, the big villainous threat, it was really interesting to recognize that my little guy, my very fragile little guy, was leading the charge.
Hmm.
You know,
Now, and
and
leading the charge from the terms of ability or chutzpah? That's the question.
just just pure defiance. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you
okay,
might
yeah.
strike me down, but a legion of followers are going to rise up in my
Right.
wake. You know, uh, that kind of stuff. It was interesting to be in a position where it would be smarter to do something else. It would be a, it would be human to get out of the way and let the big boys do it. But uh, there was a piece that I could contribute, and it might mean the death of the character. And I really like this character.
Right.
Uh, so to be true to that character, I had to put him at risk, or I wouldn't
Yeah,
have been able to play anymore.
yeah.
It's
I
got
think I think that's a big part of it. That's part of what I kept on coming up to when I was that point I was kind of making with the idea that it's not just that the character is putting something at risk, but you're kind of putting something at risk as a player. So this weird amorphous entity where it's the character player being heroic all at once, if that makes any sense. That's, it seemed to be strike, at least for me, it struck home more.
because otherwise it feels easy, right?
Right. Oh, exactly. Exactly.
And there's nothing about Arthur's life that is easy, and there's nothing about Peter Parker's life that is easy. There's nothing about Richard Wentworth's life, the Spider, that's easy. The Avenger, there's nothing that's easy. All the proto characters that go into the Western formation of the hero, you know, uh, self-sacrifice. But,
Yeah,
so
that's
I want
that's
an example from you.
hmm?
I want an example from you. I'm pointing my finger at you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I can just see that damn smirk. You're just frozen over there. I'm thinking, man, that's the problem. It's tough for me to really come up with an example. I mean, I thought to myself, well, gosh, was in All for One was Philippe kind of making the pact with a vampire? Was that heroic to save the life of his friends? Maybe it was certainly was a sacrifice to put him in
Or
some
was it
danger.
love of a lady?
It could have been. Who knows? You know. Eh, that's one of those things I thought about it, and maybe it was just the genre itself. It seems to me that like it's such a cliche example, but had he been in this, now I'm completely breaking Ron's rule. I'm just talking about what I'm pontificating. But you get well. Here I am, man. Sorry, sue me. But that idea that like had he been in the situation which we've seen a million times, where like you go and I'll and he staves and holds off the vampires long enough for the others to escape. Well, that's heroism. That didn't happen. Just in case you're wondering. And I'm thinking, man,
It
how
didn't
many times have I really seen that in a game? I've seen a lot of players do suboptimal things because that's what their character would do, and lead the defiant charge and what have you. But I don't know if I can sit back and say, man, that was heroic. Sometimes it was just like, man, that was this really headstrong guy, and he did something very foolish. Um, but I'm
Yeah,
having
you have to know the characters, right?
what's that?
You have to know the characters.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's tough. That like at the end of the day, I said it kind of made me feel a little sad because I'm thinking in my experiences, I really having a hard time coming up with something that I thought, man, that was really heroic. Maybe that's something to be discovered in my future role playing, you know, career.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
maybe, it'd be interesting to actually play some supers games, but I don't necessarily know that that's where it's got hero in the name. But is that where I'm going to find heroism, or is it going to be just in these acts of self-sacrifice that may just come out of nowhere, when you least expect them?
Right.
Yeah.
And is actually self-sacrifice, complete self-sacrifice. The hero doesn't come back from this thing. Is that required to be any kind of hero? Uh, Following Ron's rule, when I think back over, my gaming history, the characters that stand out to me, and like whenever I end up doing a blog post about heroism or uh, acts of heroism, it is that which sticks out to me.
Hmm.
Like the the hero at the very least rides off into the sunset. They don't get to live in the land of peace that their actions have allowed to come into being, because they are not of that world. They move on. And
Right.
I think that's something that's deeply embedded, either from what we read as children, or what we're taught, or how we're molded, or whatever, but or what we're not seeing in the environment. And our very spirits cry out for uh, some balance or redress. But when I think back to specific examples of role play, it keeps coming back to, this is where the player took their treasured character, put their life on the line for the benefit of others,
Right.
because they could see a way through, right? I can't see any way for us all to get out of here, but I can see a way for all of you to get out of here, or for this thing to be defeated, or, whatever. And that was powerful on a personal level. And obviously it's powerful on a fictional level.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you made that point that just the idea it doesn't necessarily have to be self-sacrifice in that you die or whatever happens, but you don't get to benefit from
From the thing.
the thing, whatever it happens to be. That yeah, you're not part of this world, and yeah, so to me it definitely keeps coming back to this idea that at least in a role-playing game, it's got to be that player taking the risk with the treasured character just as much as the character taking a risk. Because to be honest, it could be really easy with a throwaway character. Yeah, go do something really heroic. That's great. Did that really, if there's this big strong frame between me and the character, was that really heroic, or did I just tell a story about a hero?
Right. Or did I just
Or
tell a story about an action?
right, yes, or yeah, yeah, in a directorial kind of sense, like, and this is what the hero does. Isn't that great? It's not to be belittle that style of play, or like it's certainly games where that's what you're supposed to do. Is like let's
Sure.
but it doesn't strike home for me as much. So yeah, at the end of the day, and literally it was a day. I know I say that too much. I was like, man, I just really can't point to one and say that's the example right there. You know,
Right. That's the one.
yeah,
And system, of course, matters. So if the system's helping you out by making the PC more capable than what they are facing, if the system helps the character out by saying, in this game, death is not on the table,
Right.
That kind of stuff, it might get harder for someone with an outlook of heroes are in some way connected to self-sacrifice to feel that, right?
Right.
Then you get into the hero is someone who does what no one else can or will do. The someone who refuses to embrace corruption, even though all around them have.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
No. Go ahead. You go first.
no,
All right. It's my video. I'll go first.
yeah,
That was
not being
you
so
reminded
lazy.
me. Yeah, you reminded me of the one other thing I was thinking of. Was the whole, oh my God, you're moving. The whole system. The whole system matters thing. We've talked back and forth every once in a while about the, gosh, in this Mithras game that we're playing, what if we were playing Ubiquity? And once again, our characters are in this very dangerous situation where they're not heroes, but it does dictate to a certain extent, in an action that would be um, heroic in playing something like D100, playing with the Mithras system, where it's just, man, you get maimed. You like that word a lot. You're talking about our characters getting maimed all the time. You know, doing that same action, running in to save the baby or whatever it is. If I was playing Ubiquity, looks heroic. We can certainly, narrate it as being heroic. Is it really as heroic? Knowing that, more than likely I'm going to use style and maybe I'll get hurt. It's a good, there's a chance I could die, but, it's not the same level of risk from just a system
True.
standpoint. And so even though
Yeah.
the character may be the same fictionally, it's different.
Right. The challenge to the player is higher. How can I accomplish the action with this very specific focus on other elements? Yeah. And
Yeah, and even on a character standpoint, in a very weird way, the characters in like a world where the physics is run by Ubiquity or Fate or PBTA, the reality is very different to them, to their eyes. I don't get hurt normally, as opposed to somebody in D100 where yes, I get hurt all the time. God, I just got a paper cut. It's I think I'm maimed.
I have a merit badge.
Right, exactly.
I'm still here. I just had to retrieve
Yeah.
this guy.
I'm excited. I recognize the excited.
Yeah. Yeah. He's tired of all the attention being on not him.
I understand. And a dog after my own heart.
I'm a hero, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah. More heroic than I. But yeah, I don't know if I can say any more than that. Just I wish I had better examples of heroism. I've had other gripping examples in role playing games, but not. And I've had people make sacrifice in some way, shape, or form, or I think I've had
What about
people
resist corruption?
Resist corruption.
Be true to the old ways, or follow a code, or
Yeah, I've seen more of that. I was thinking about Ron's example of the games that told you very prescriptively, this is what a hero is, and this is what you must do, and but in a game that made but in a way that doesn't, like, where the game doesn't, if I can talk, doesn't necessarily tell you that you have to do that, or it's not mechanically reinforced. Yeah, I've seen that, but I'm not sure. Gosh, is that a hero, or is that just a player with a really clear view of that's what the character's like?
Well, it's not like, I mean, the real world. There's no answers either. I guess we all pretty much agree that the person who runs into the burning house to save the baby is one, and the
Right.
person who didn't isn't.
Yeah, you know what? That probably is another thing that I think strikes me is, at least for me, like when the litmus test is heroism is not planned. Like a moment shows up, a decision is made, you're heroic right then. If it's working,
Heroism and thrust upon you.
yeah, and whether you like it or not, because you think about like the real world examples, but that was very heroic. It's generally I can't think of any examples where it's planned. You know, person just acted, they did something, and it's heroic in hindsight. Like and they're rather puzzled or whatever. I guess anybody would do it, and you realize, well, no, anybody wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Right. What anybody would do is purely human,
right.
and uh, and so that means there are those around us who are less than.
Ah.
But what about comics characters, the classic comics, like you were talking about Wolverine, so the X-Men?
Right.
Do you see them, even if you can't think of a specific example because you haven't read comics in ages?
Right.
Um, do you see the X-Men as heroes?
Yeah, I think I had a very strong sense that they were heroic. Um,
Or did you think of them as the good guys?
no, man, I tell you, I mean, I was reading them in this era where it was just so morally gray at times, and they all were so flawed, and they weren't necessarily the good guys. They were the people that tended to do the good things when they needed to be done. They didn't necessarily do good things all the time. you know, there's sometimes the
Okay.
people that just simply said, "Man, I don't want to do that," and son of a gun, and would just go step up and take care of business, whatever that happened to be, and sometimes just grumbling about it, like I really don't want to do this, doing it anyway. You
What
know,
about what about the Hulk?
that's an interesting one. Hard to say. The
And
Hulk
which
was just
one's
a
the
great
hero,
Hulk.
Hulk or Banner?
Yeah, yeah, that's a difficult. It was one of my favorite comic books, actually. You know, but and of course, thank God for the Hulk, we have Rocket Raccoon. It's his fault. I was there for that. I hate to tell you, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
And
Spider-Man as being rather heroic.
yeah, you want to put Spider-Man on the hero side?
Yeah,
Okay.
he always just seemed to be so outgunned, and but seemed to be if I recall correctly, seemed to be thrust into these situations he did not want to be in. You
Right.
know?
Okay. What about let's go over the DC side. What Green Arrow?
Yeah, see, I'm just not enough of a DC aficionado.
Interesting.
I don't know. I read different iterations of Batman. Um, it's going to get people mad at me. All of a sudden, they have the DC fans throwing rocks at the screen. What's their screen? They won't break mine. But so many of those characters always seem so one dimensional.
Ah,
Yeah.
palatable for
Yeah,
the
even when they made Batman a tortured soul, he seemed to be a one-dimensional tortured soul. And like I said, I don't know enough about it, but I never read those comic books with any like real sense of satisfaction.
that's interesting.
Except for Commandy, because he was the last boy on Earth, and those were cool. And Jack Kirby was great, and
What was he a
well,
hero though?
yeah, was he a hero? No, he was just the last boy on Earth trying to get by. There was nothing, there were, did he do things that were heroic sometimes? I suppose, you know,
Conan.
he was just kind of
Conan.
reluctant at best. He might have had to do some to save some people, but hero, no. I,
Solomon Kane. I got one more to hit you with. Solomon Kane.
yeah. I don't know enough about them. I could tell you like the one stuff I've read, kind of reluctant, but
Okay, so here's the last one, and we're out of superheroes, but
right.
uh, Elric.
Elric, oof, yeah. I read all those late, but I did read them. And I really enjoyed the whole saga. God, he got put into some situations where he had, well, no, he didn't have to. He made a choice to do something, which was, could it would be seen as heroic by the people that benefited from it.
There
was
we go. That was the point I was waiting for.
Oh yeah, no, that was the point I thought about it way back in the day. It was one of the one things I wanted to bring up is heroism being defined by the beneficiaries.
And certainly not by the hero.
Right.
The real hero does not self-identify as a hero.
Right. But yeah, being defined by the beneficiaries. Yes, that guy is my hero because he saved our village. He did the thing. He got rid of the whatever threat it was or whatever the hero does.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's at some point had she been conscious, Eugene said, "Yeah, my hero, Philippe, my hero," but she wasn't conscious. But she was a beneficiary, and Briscoe, well, he probably would have just said he would have come up with some other reason why he helped, even though he was
Uh-huh.
unconscious. But there's that point of like heroism being defined by those that benefit from the hero. You know.
Yeah. And to greater or lesser degree in smaller to larger numbers. Yeah. So I've collected a lot of superhero games, and I found Ron's point that the Champions doesn't talk about what is a hero really
Right.
interesting, because each time I've read these games, it's really stuck out what kind of hero the game is trying to produce. Even if it's something like this is the DC Heroes role playing game, or
Right.
this is the Marvel superheroes game, where it's just trying to remind you of the particular flavor of character that those companies produce. But something like Villains and Vigilantes comes right out and in a very bald language to tell you, this is a hero, and to a lesser degree, uh, Heroes Unlimited does, but it gives you Palladium's alignment system, so
Right.
from the beginning if you're on the good side or the evil side, because you have to choose.
Right. Right. Yeah, I did find that idea that the champions and champions now presumably doesn't define what give you a definition. You have to figure it out for yourself. To be pretty cool. I like that, because I was thinking, it's easy for the beneficiaries to point at somebody and say, well, that's a hero. There's always the people on the other side. Oh no, that's the villain.
That's right.
Perspective is everything. Yeah.
So if you were to play a superhero role-playing game, would you do it to play a hero, or would you do it for superpowered adventurism, or fill in the blank?
Man, that's a good one. I don't know that I do it to play a hero. I mean, what I found the most compelling, and I started to play one for a little while with Stephanie, and it just didn't congeal. I like the idea of playing somebody who has discovered or has some sort of ability, and now what?
And now,
I like that. The idea. What do you do with that? You know, you could do anything with it. There was an expectation in that particular game that you're going to follow in the footsteps. It was like it was mass, so you're going to follow in the footsteps of those who have come before, and you're the new generation of supers and what have you. Um, but you're supposed to be petulant children, which is actually I kind of like that idea. You're, but what that I think it would be it appeals to me the most about playing a supers game isn't the idea that I'm going to be a hero or that it's fantasy wish fulfillment, and now I can fly and shoot beams out of my eyes. It's more like, well, you have this ability. What do you do?
Hmm.
The world is before you.
I believe somebody said something about power and responsibility. It's not a very well-known quote. You almost never hear it, but I'm pretty sure that comes in there somewhere.
Gentle Uncle Ben. I remember Spider-Man back in the day, with the first page of every freaking Spider-Man comic book was about Gentle Ben, and that quote and everything, and Aunt May, and guys, I'm old enough, but yeah. But I don't necessarily mean the game has to be all about that moral question: is will I be good today, or will I be evil today? But just how do you navigate life, because you're different.
Hmm.
You can do things that other people can't do, and it doesn't have to be over the top. Like just your example of the guy with the minor powers. My girlfriend and I, like, we want to watch Glass, so she's never seen Unbreakable, so we've got to watch that. And neither of us have seen the other movie, and that's, I mean, heck, who doesn't want to play the superhero that can fly and shoot the beams out of his eyes? That's cool too. But just the guy with the little minor stuff, still, you're different. How do you
Yeah,
navigate life?
yeah. And how do you the just to go back to my character again, like the game master was very sensitive to the idea that built the character. The psychological framework. So he kept throwing opportunities to regain lost glory, regain lost fame, to
Oh yeah,
to
yeah.
restart his acting career and stuff. All of these were there, and then over there on the left is it really seems like something bad is happening. You could go to the meeting and with the exec who's interested in launching your career, or deal with this thing that's happening over here, or one thing would snowball into another.
All
and
right, right.
and at what point do you say, what about me, what about my life? And so he was really good at putting those challenges in front of us, and
Hmm.
to make decisions worthwhile,
Right.
rather than purely I'm playing the hero, so I'm going to do the good thing.
Right.
It's think of all the good you can do if you were wealthy again. Think of all the
Right.
good you could do if you were being hired to do PSAs and getting to talk to children. Think of all the good you could do, right? As a role model again, not a has been, but a very much now.
Right.
Yeah, but that lady's getting robbed.
I was thinking you're walking past. I had a cat stuck in trees stuck in my head. As you're, oh no, wait, I'm gonna be late. I'm gonna be late for the interview, but there's this cat stuck in the tree. Yeah, but I get the idea. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, those kind of decisions in the now, defining heroism. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know.
It was definitely a compelling time. It was one of those ones that, like, I knew it was a good topic because, it wasn't one of those things I could just go, oh, well, here you go. I was more like, huh, son of a gun. That's tough. So
Yeah,
hopefully other
most of
people
my
will
favorite
chime in.
examples about most of my favorite examples about heroes have already been posted, like on my blog or in like RPG a day
Right.
stuff. Those are my
I'm sure.
favorite examples, not my only examples, but it's interesting. Like when the blog carnival, the WordPress and the RPG blog carnival, which used to be much bigger than it is now,
Right.
would pick a topic related to heroes. It was really interesting how the post count, right, would drop.
Right.
Like you'd watch how someone would say making places seem magical, right? It's a description thing, or and there'd be like 1,000 posts a day. It felt like, and then you know, heroes, 10 posts. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, like nobody has examples from play of things they thought were heroic or characters they thought were heroic. Why
Yeah.
not? Why not?
That was the interesting part. I kind of was, you know, thinking like I couldn't think of stuff, or I was having a hard time. I'm sure I'll come up with examples and I'll tell you all about them. But I mean, there's got to be some. I hope. But either that or my play has sucked for all these years. But I'm thinking like I'm watching nobody
Oh,
else comment either, and I'm thinking, this is definitely there's a truism here. There's a phenomenon here.
yeah.
Because otherwise
But no, it
nobody.
doesn't mean your play sucked. It means your play was about something else.
Right, exactly. I get the idea. But yeah, so much of that, like just not to be repetitive, is like it's about I look at it, it's like that was a math problem. There was something to be gained. There was a cost benefit analysis, or there was an orchestrated heroic event, and there really wasn't, on a gut level. It didn't punch the player in the gut when that
Mhm.
happened. It's like, as
Right.
opposed to like that thing where both the character and the player in the moment have to make this decision, which isn't really going to benefit them anything except maybe if they survive, they can sleep at night.
It's true.
Yes, that
What about this? Hey, man, let's play a campaign where the world is threatened and we have to save it.
yeah, and I've played that 500,000 times in one way, shape, or form. It's not really very heroic. It's like you're going to work. It's your job.
Sometimes
Maybe you've been
that's
elected.
heroic, man.
Oh God, yeah, there are days when it's heroic. But,
A lot of the
that,
people
that
that I work
that's
with, I think their personal heroes is the baristas at Starbucks.
right, right. Yeah, there can be
You
days.
saved my life.
Yeah, but that either falls into like that's your job or you're a slave and you've been assigned to do this, whether like it or not.
Yeah. There's
But
a
I
there's
get
a
the idea.
prophecy. You must resist the evil that's going to destroy the world. It's like,
Yeah, I've read the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. That was not about heroism. That was about this guy going, son of a bitch.
oh,
Please,
now
no,
that's a
no.
fantastic example. I mean, I sat down uh, to read Lord Fowle's Bane
Yeah,
on like a Friday night, and I was a traveling salesman at the time, right? So I'm hotels and whatnot. So I'm far away from home. So on a Friday night, I sit down with Lord Fowle's Bane, and then Monday morning, I had finished the first trilogy.
right, right,
You know, it's like, holy crap, this is so refreshing.
right. It was completely like the reluctant hero doesn't even begin to cover it, and you can't really even call him a hero. It's just this guy. It's like
Right.
this.
He's an agonist. I'm not sure he's a
Right.
protagonist or an antagonist, but
Yeah, yeah.
he's the yeah, and that's a division that was raised in the comments on Ron's initial video. Actually, is um, we're not simply talking about we're not simply talking about protagonists and antagonists. We're talking about something beyond, and that person couldn't present examples either, and
Right.
or didn't. I don't know if they can't, but they didn't. But uh, it's interesting to think about. You know, we settle down to play a character. So in other words, we settle down to play some form of protagonist when we choose to play a role playing game. And if the setup is at all open, meaning there are contributions, it's not pre-written or whatever. There are contributions that you can make to where it goes and how it gets there. Um, how often is heroism on your mind? And if it is, are you going to be successful at all?
Right. Hmm.
Are you just going to have done the thing? And if the campaign setup or the scenario setup is pushing in a direction like you are Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and once again, the world or the city is at stake, and only you can stop it. Does that make her heroic? Does it make that character heroic? Will it feel that way in play, or will it feel successful, unsuccessful?
Right.
So these are huge questions.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the campaign that I thought was like moving, like in hindsight, it was moving towards potential acts of heroism. Oddly enough, was the Lamentations in Prussia game with Jason and Lee and Josh, and there are these moments because they were very morally gray characters. Was very There was no thing they were supposed to do. They were just muddling their way through this horror of the 30 Years' War, with supernatural crap, which was really kind of fringe, but I think Jason's character did. He was very driven, so I'm not sure if it was a moment of sacrifice, but it was one of those campaigns, if you will, that was pregnant with the opportunity for heroism to show up. Like I could
Hmm.
see any one of those characters in the moment. I'm kind of sad that it ended. Um, that was one of the things where I think it fostered the environment where heroism could have happened. I couldn't tell you when it was going to happen, but
Right.
that makes any sense. It seemed like that. It seemed like it
Well, that
fostered.
that seems to match. That seems to match your perception of heroism. It's thrust upon you. It's in the moment. It's a sacrifice, right?
Right.
So it's harder to picture the cavalier or the paladin or the hero raised from birth, the Doc Savage uh, guy. It's harder to picture them maybe in the role of hero as you have it imagined, right?
Right. Right. That's this guy's job. Yeah. But it's like we're in All for One where we're sitting in front of Monsieur de Treville, I think after the first episode or whatever, and he says, "What have you done?" And Seb, doesn't skip a beat. Says, "Our job."
Yeah,
That's one of the great lines in
yeah.
that campaign. It's like it's just our job. So we do.
That's what we do. We're here to protect, and so
Right.
yeah. Mm,
Yeah. And they engage in that. I mean, they engage in acts of heroism. But I
that's
don't
right.
know.
I'm heroically seeking revenge
Right, right.
because I have the blood of kings in my veins. Gosh darn it!
Right. There are those moments where like everybody flees and the musketeers run the other way towards the danger that is heroic. You know.
Yes, sure. Or teleports away and then comes back
Oh yeah, well that's it.
heroically.
Heroically. Philippe generally
All
tends
right.
to stand in the way of a bullet so that nobody else takes it. At least
Well,
that's how you would retroactively tell you what happened.
that's right. That's right.
This is not what happened.
I saved my horse from
Yeah,
being shot.
repeatedly. Exactly.
That's why
Yeah,
we
well,
have those big white targets on our chest.
all right. Yeah. I do, yeah, but then, yeah, there's a difference. I mean, at least to me, and I'm sure other people don't have that difference. The difference between the characters kind of expected, or that's their career, or they're kind of they're a crusader, they're a cavalier, they're whatever it is, going out to right the wrongs of the world, as opposed to the person who, in the moment, you know, not they're generally not heroic, or they're I don't know, they don't go looking for heroic stuff to do.
Mm.
Is a better way to say it.
But in both of those, suggest to the game master what it is that they need to do in order to put the opportunity in front of the player.
Right.
If we're playing some kind of game where people are normal, like broken rooms or desolation or something like that, um, Shadowrun even, there's ostensibly what you created the character to do, and then there are choices that they need to make, and
Right.
how does this happen? Or if you're playing an out and out supers game, like spandex uniforms and capes and the whole 9 yards, mass secret identities. If you're really going for it, what type of choices need to be a part of the background? Like what is the way that we get into a situation where the player actually gets to experience some kind of choice rather than just choosing actions through encounters.
All right.
And I think that that gets us to the meat of having hero in superhero. Otherwise, it's just supers.
Right, exactly. It's just people with powers doing stuff with powers
Powerfully.
because they, yeah, because they have powers and they're powerfully doing
Yeah, true enough.
it in a self-referential manner. Yeah. Well, that'll be something to continue. I hope some other people chime in because I'd like to hear if somebody has some great examples.
I want a wave of examples. I want us to drown in examples of this is something I saw in play that is heroic. Because that, after all, was what was asked for.
Right, exactly, and I would like to see it. And you know, I don't know how many minutes this is going on, but I haven't been able to give you one example. And zero, I've given you zero
4 hours. We've been talking for 4 hours.
4 hours, but you know, it's harder than it looks, kids. But then again, your definition of be a hero may be different than mine, so
Well, yeah.
that seems unthinkable, but apparently that could happen.
Well,
Some
remember,
people,
this isn't your channel. This isn't about you. This is in the video response group. And so it's,
it's about us.
all of
Exactly.
us.
Yeah, but that'd be cool. I'd love to see what else other people have to say. Anyhow, it's about nighttime, so I'm gonna go do nighttime things. And thanks for joining the chat.
I'm glad it actually worked. It's
Yeah, me
refreshing.
too. Me too. I do enjoy this. Is always better than just the talking head thing.
One thing that was interesting is that it prompted me and it wouldn't let me join until my screen orientation matched yours.
Aha. It's good to
So I
know.
thought that was interesting.
It's no good. You got to kind of go to the horizontal.
Exactly. It's like, no, change to the horizontal. No, change to the horizontal.
That's
So I
awesome.
changed to the horizontal.
Right on. Technological misadventure, thwarted. All right, enjoy Sunday. Let me know what it was like.
So far,
Okay, good. I'm glad. Hoping Sunday will be good. All right, kids. We will see you later. Make responses, participate, and all that stuff.